One of the most important aspects of warfare is communication. You could have the best generals utilizing the best tactics and strategies, but if they can't communicate with their forces, it's worthless. It's been this way since the beginning. In the past, ways of communicating involved runners delivering messages, large fires that your troops could see, birds, flags, trumpets, Morse code, and many more. But they all have had some pretty serious limitations on how much information they can relay and how quickly they can send it. SpaceX's Starlink, which will provide virtually global satellite internet, is quickly changing that. And we also now know that it won't just be for civilians. The US military will be using it as well. The US Air Force gave SpaceX $28 million to test military uses of Starlink back in 2018. They also used it during a recent exercise, and it even assisted in shooting down a cruise missile. But first, our sponsor. War Thunder is a fast-paced, intense action multiplayer game that's free to play on Xbox, PC, and PlayStation. It centers around combat military vehicles such as tanks, planes, and helicopters. It's all free, and the platforms are cross-compatible, so if you have friends who game on the Xbox, you can still play with them from your PC. If you enjoy my content, then you'll absolutely love War Thunder, as both are military combat-centric. They go hand in hand. This game has an incredible amount of historically accurate vehicles. In fact, upward of 1,700 playable vehicles from the early 1930s to as late as the 1990s. I personally enjoy playing as tanks, like the M4 Sherman or the T-34 tank. They are historically accurate, and things like vehicle damage is very realistic. And with the new power update, they're celebrating their 8th anniversary by completely upgrading the game engine, including improved graphics, new interactive features, and a new battle pass and season system offering unique rewards. With over 34 million players from around the world, you'll always find a match to play. So go try out War Thunder. If you join now with the link in the description, you'll get some free bonuses such as a premium tank, aircraft, or ship, and a 3-day account boost. And who knows, you might even run into me in the game. While we have had communication satellites for decades, they are limited by several factors. Their much higher orbit creates a longer latency. They are large and extremely expensive, and there are very few of them compared to Starlink. That latency is a big one. Most military communication satellites are in high orbit, often in geosynchronous orbit, nearly 36,000 kilometers in altitude. Compared to Starlink's current 550 kilometer orbit, that latency is over 65 times longer. Now both are still fractions of a second, but when you're talking about vital real-time information, that's a lot. But the problem with lower orbit is that they are limited by the horizon, at best, and traveling much faster, quickly passing over an area and out of range. So you're going to need more of them to provide continuous coverage. Many more, thousands more. That large of a satellite constellation is nearly unthinkable for any military to design, construct, launch, and operate, but not for a private company like SpaceX. Their plan to make it profitable by providing commercial services provides the motivation to do it. And there is strength in numbers. We've all seen the very public tests of countries showing off their ability to shoot down a satellite, but nowhere near thousands of them. Besides satellites, militaries also rely on undersea cables for communication of information, and have for a long time. During the Cold War, both US and Soviet submarines tapped each other's cables to gather intelligence. The most famous being Operation Ivy Bells, where the US was able to tap a Soviet underseas cable, gathering an incredible amount of information on Soviet naval operations and the Soviets' entire Pacific Fleet's ballistic missile submarine force. These undersea cables could also be sabotaged and cut in the event of war, cutting off communication between bases and units. Having a large, reliable, fast satellite network cuts out that risk. So, use of Starlink is faster, cheaper, and more survivable. But what does that mean for the military? Today, everything is about information and connectivity. People want more data and faster, and the military is no exception. Information is power, therefore the military is seeking new ways to provide as much information as possible to as many units as possible, and all in real time. The goal is to increase situational awareness by sharing data across all units and branches of the military. This has massive implications, enabling a leap in capability comparable to the invention of radio itself. When you have access to that much information from anyone, anywhere, regardless of your own location, things like we see in the movies become possible. You could even then begin to integrate things like augmented reality. It could show exact locations of enemy that you can't see yourself, but maybe a drone overhead can, and have it relay that information to you in real time. Aircraft could get pinpoint locations of enemies a soldier on the front lines could see, and provide perfect, accurate close air support. The US recently carried out the Advanced Battle Management System exercise, held to test and develop these capabilities, and they used Starlink for part of it. sending previously impossible amounts of data to an aircraft in the air, and also relaying information to assist in the shooting down of a cruise missile surrogate with a hypervelocity projectile. Starlink really offers the military an incredible capability over current systems. Its small antenna allows it to be used on aircraft, ships, even mobile units, with data speeds comparable to the current wired internet today. In fact, a C-12 in flight was tested and reached a speed of over 600 megabits per second, likely much faster than the internet you even have at home. One major problem though could be hacking, just like the ground-based wired internet we're used to. If the US military shares the same satellites providing internet to civilians, it opens that door. The satellites themselves could also be potentially hacked. Unlike undersea cables, these satellites have an open connection and always listening for information being sent to it, and that could possibly be exploited. And hackers have successfully hacked into satellites before. The US Department of Defense even held an exercise called Hack-A-Sat, where it invited hackers to try to hack into an actual in-orbit satellite, and a team succeeded in rotating a satellite and using it to take a picture of the moon. So there are some real concerns here. That works in both directions though. By using them, the military could have its foot in the door to listen to all internet traffic running through it, just like back in Operation Ivy Bells when it tapped an undersea cable. Because of this, other nations like Russia and China likely won't use it. They are both notorious for separating and controlling their own internet and communication networks for this reason. In fact, China is reportedly beginning to develop their own version of Starlink. Other companies are as well, including Amazon, who plans to launch more than 3,000 satellites into orbit. Before Starlink, there were only some 2,500 active satellites in space. With SpaceX's Starlink, Amazon's Project Kuiper, and others, that number will skyrocket. Low Earth orbit's gonna get pretty packed. There is only so much space in space, and also only so much of the frequency spectrum on which they can operate before they start interfering with others. The first ones to become operational will have a huge advantage, and also will the military that uses it. Information is power, and communications the power lines. And the US military is about to have access to a lot of both.